What's going on, guys? It's David Haas here, your host of the Rise Up Rich podcast. Thanks for taking the time to come to the podcast today and listen. I really think today is going to be a great podcast. I'm here in the studio all alone. What I've been having to do lately is record my podcast on my own, but now I'm even more alone because I don't have my social media coordinator here, Juliana, who is usually doing the filming. She's in a quarantine herself. But this is kind of the new reality, and the one thing that I want to talk about before we get into this podcast is based around how to build more confidence. I just want to talk about the coronavirus and this new way of life that we're all kind of getting used to. And I think the biggest thing for me is, this is what I've been pushing in a lot of my content is like, what has the coronavirus highlighted for you? What was, if your financial situation has been highlighted because you don't have enough money right now, then that was just a sign that, it's time to get your finances in order. If you're super stressed out because of the coronavirus or in a state of fear, it's just a sign that you were probably in a state of fear before this whole thing kind of went down. And now that's your opportunity. Now that it's been highlighted, you can start to take action. We can't solve a problem without the awareness of the problem. And I think this really is the issue for a lot of people that lack humility, because they never have awareness of what their problems are, so they can never solve any of their problems. So this is an opportunity, I think, an opportunity, a moment of clarity, a moment to step back from our regular day-to-day life and get some real clarity on what is it that we need to resolve in our lives. And for me, just to give you my own personal example, the one thing that I was struggling with for a very long time was my addiction to pop and sugar. As you know, if you've listened to my content, as a kid, I was kind of left on my own after my mother died. And if you leave a 7-year-old in charge of what he's supposed to eat, he's not going to eat very well. And I lived my life growing up on peanut butter and jam sandwiches, lots of pop, lot of high sugar diet. And I've really been working to overcome that addiction for the better part of my life. And because of spiritual growth and spiritual development, I was able to get to the root of the issue, was that I was looking for a caregiver in my life. I've been waiting for someone to take care of me like my mother was unable to do because she had passed away. So my entire life I've been searching for a caregiver, and I wasn't going to take the responsibility, I guess is what it was, to start eating healthy and taking care of myself until someone kind of showed up for me and did that. And I knew because of that awareness that I had to become my own caregiver, but it wasn't until this coronavirus hit that I finally was able to take charge and become my own caregiver for the first time. And now, because of this thing has lasted so long, is that it's really installed this habit. And one of the posts I made was that there's never been a better time to install a new habit. And this is what is our opportunity right now, is to install an amazing new habit. Just because we're 2 months into this thing, don't wait, install that habit, because here's your opportunity. And when I come out of this thing, when the world turns back on, I'm going to be completely free of my addiction to pop and sugar. And that's the gift that the coronavirus has given me. And, if you choose to live in a world, you can choose to live in a world where miracles happen every day. And that's the world I want to live in. So constantly I'm just searching for, what is the gift of today? And what is the gift of this terrible virus? And I want to find that answer. And for me, the gift was that I finally became my own caregiver. So just a question for you as an aside before we get into today's podcast is like, what gift has this coronavirus, this isolation, this quarantine given to you? What has it highlighted for you? What areas of your life do you need to improve and work on? This is the gift that I think it's given everybody. And I think a lot of people are going to come out of this thing with a lot more clarity. But today, what I want to just terribly transition into is about confidence. And I think the reason this is on my radar, because 90% of what I do for my coaching clients is try and give them the confidence to execute on their vision. And every time I get on the phone with people, every time I'm on one-on-one with people, I can see their business concept, because I have this ability to now, and I trust that ability to see a business from top to bottom on how they're going to get customers, how they're going to execute sales, how it's going to grow. Like I can see it right from the ground up. I was able to do that for many, many people's businesses, but they don't see it. They don't see the full picture yet. So partly what I'm doing is helping them to allow them to see the picture. And not being able to see the picture, I think, is one of the things that holds people back from having the confidence to execute on their dreams. So that comes to my first point, is like, you need to be able to see the finish line. And when we can't see the finish line, we don't have the energy or the confidence or the, I guess, the desire to move forward because it's just too cloudy. We just don't know where we're going. And, I talk a lot about this, and this is why I got a lighthouse tattooed on my arms, because we have to have that lighthouse. We have to know where we're going. We have to know where we currently are, and we have to know where we're going. This is like our GPS. And so how do you know where you're going? Well, you don't have to really define the actual mechanism of how to achieve it, like the actual step-by-step process. You don't need to know that, but you do need to know where you want to go. So, for example, with my coaching system, David F. Haas Coaching with the Rise Up Rich podcast, I know where I want this thing to go at one point. And I'll share it with you right now is I eventually want to be, helping millions of people. I want to be speaking to full stadiums of people. I want to have 1 million people that I'm impacting their lives, 1 million followers on Facebook and Instagram. I want to be releasing online programs so I can impact even more people. I can only do so much one-on-one. But when I get into like podcasts and other things, I can affect more people's lives. This is what I want to do. This is my passion. This is my purpose. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my entire life. So I know where I'm going. Not necessarily do I know how I'm going to get there, but that leads me to the next thing, which is that if you want to learn how to get there, all you have to do is get into action. And I talked a lot about this in my last podcast was that everyone gets hung up on the how. How do I go from point A to point B? How do I start my business from the ground up? How do I gain more followers? How do I increase my impact? And everyone gets so caught up on the how, and it becomes such an overwhelming question that we don't actually take any action. But the thing is, the conundrum is that it is only through action that the how gets answered. So even for me in this thing, when I started this thing out, I was like, how am I going to get coaching clients? Like, how am I going to do this? And the how was becoming so overwhelming that it was just making me not do. And another thing that was making me not get into action was that I just wasn't really good at sales. I wasn't really good at getting my content out there. If you scroll back through my Instagram, you look at some of my first videos, they were absolutely terrible, right? So when you're not getting the feedback, when you're not good at what you're doing, you also don't have the energy. But again, the conundrum is that the only way you improve is by taking action. So this is when we move into the next step of why people lack confidence. It's because it's what's going on inside of them. And I have this saying that it's never about what's going on out there, and it's always about what's going on in here. So we need to now try to understand what is happening inside of me. Like, where did this self-doubt come inside of me? Like, where did I begin to doubt that I was able to execute on my dreams? And it probably came from a failure, or it probably came from being scolded by a parent, or whatever it may be. But getting to the root of where self-doubt began is one of the critical factors to improving our self-confidence. Another thing that holds us back from having confidence is a feeling of undeservingness or unwillingness. So how do you become a more deserving person, more unworthiness, sorry. How do you become a more worthy person or a more deserving person? Well, look back into your past. Where did this feeling of that you don't deserve love or you don't deserve success begin, right? And it's usually in childhood from the ages of 0 to 12. So we got to look back to those moments in time, and then we got to allow that child to truly feel those feelings and be free of them. Because what the ego does, and the ego is just the mind unobserved. What the ego does is it will create protection mechanisms to make sure that we never feel a certain way. What the ego wants to do is protect us. That's its primary function. And it was super important thousands of years ago when we were living in caves and we were running from saber-toothed tigers. We needed the ego to preserve our body so that we could experience this wonderful life. But now the ego, what's happened is that we've become so identified with the ego, we've become so egocentric, if you will, that we're not even connecting to our higher self. So without that connection to our higher self, the ego believes it is the center of the universe, and it will do everything in its power to protect us. So let me give you my own personal example. When I was a kid, again, I said I was growing up, and my dad was terrible at taking care of himself and us. Not I shouldn't say us. He was a good father, just He didn't care about the way our house looked, the cars that we drove. He didn't dress very well himself, so we obviously weren't dressing very well. I wasn't taking care of my own personal hygiene. And one day in grade school, I had these girls come up to me and they say, Dave, you gotta start taking better care of yourself. And what they said in a very nice way, and I'm insanely grateful that they did this, they basically were telling me I was a smelly kid, right? There was all that, and then what I had to identify was that there was shame around that, right? So I had to feel that shame and be free of it. What that shame did, what living in a house that wasn't like that I compared to my other friends was, subpar. Not that we were poor, but just my dad didn't take care of our stuff. Driving crappy cars. I remember this one story is that my dad had this old Ford Tempo, and it had been in an accident. It had multicolored fenders, and he had 2 flat tires, and he was using the spare tires. So we're driving around the town of Essex where I grew up with 2 spare tires on the back of this Ford Tempo. And I remember being so embarrassed about being in that car that if I saw people, not even people that I knew, if I just saw people, I'd pretend to tie my shoes so they wouldn't see me in the car. That's how embarrassed I was. So what the ego did to make sure that I never felt that shame or never felt that embarrassment ever again is it tied that to success. It was like, if you become successful, if you make money, if you become desirable to women, you're never going to feel that way again. So this became a barrier to me succeeding because I was only focused on the success, and it was for all the wrong reasons. I wasn't focused on success to impact millions of people. I was focused on the success because I want to make sure that I never feel shame again, right? And this is why we see people rise to the top and they fall, right? Is because if they do it for the wrong reasons, they do it out of spite or out of anger, or if they do it to protect themselves from feeling shame, when they get to the top and they achieve that goal, they're not going to be fulfilled. So a big part of understanding what is blocking us from having the confidence is understanding what our motivations are and what the ego is trying to do to protect us from not feeling a certain way. People pleasing is another example. The reason that we people please is this: we're trying to avoid feeling negative emotions, right? So we believe that if we're nice to everyone, how could we ever be judged? How could we ever be criticized? It's just a mechanism that the ego created to make sure that we stay safe. So with all that being said, what we need to uncover is we need to have the awareness to what these belief systems, what these programs are that the ego has created to protect us. Because once we have that awareness, we can begin to fix the problem. So the next thing is belief systems, and this is similar to the ego, but this is belief systems that have been supported by like society. Things like money is the root of all evil. It takes money to make money. Only people with money are happy, or whatever. It doesn't even have to be around money. I'm just using money as my example. Let's use weight loss. I have a thyroid issue, or I've tried every single diet and nothing works. I don't have the body type to lose weight. I'm not an athletic person. Whatever it is, whatever your belief system is that you've been telling yourself, that is something that is going to suck your energy and not allow you to execute on your dreams. It's going to steal your confidence because you have this belief that, let's say if it takes money to make money, you have this belief, well, I don't have any money, so I'm never going to be able to make any money, right? So the first thing I do with belief systems, I ask just really bring some more awareness to them, and I say, is this true, right? And then I start to go out and try and disprove it, right? I recently had a client that said he thinks he's too old to achieve what he wants to achieve. And right away, the first thing I did was just send him articles of people that were able to achieve success after the age of 40, right? And it's really simple, a few simple searches. So then once you debunk this belief system, already you've taken some power back. The next step, again, though, is to ask where that belief system began. And somewhere throughout your life, throughout the history of your childhood, you took on this belief system, right? And in that belief system, it got reinforced over time. And all a belief system is a thought that you keep on telling yourself. Okay? So let me just repeat that. All a belief system is a thought that you keep on telling yourself. It has nothing to do with whether it's true or not. Okay? So another thing that a client of mine recently said was that if I turn my passion into my purpose, I turn my passion into my job, I'm no longer going to have passion for it. And I'm like, well, is that 100% true? Is that just an old myth that's been told? If you're really truly aligned with what it is you want to do, like I am, there is nothing that's ever going to stop me from doing what I do. Now, maybe it transforms. Maybe it's not me sitting in front of this camera and doing this podcast. Maybe it's not doing one-on-one clients. Maybe it's a different form of what I want to do. But I know that I know deep down in my heart, in my soul, that this is what I'm meant to do, is to deliver my message, to impact people, to help people. And I'm going to be doing that for the rest of my life. I know that. So there's nothing that's going to sway me. It's not going to turn me off, whatever. So if people were saying that, my passion was tennis, and then all of a sudden tennis became a job and now I hated tennis, well, maybe the answer to that is, was tennis really your passion, right? So just getting really, truly connected to what it is you're supposed to do will debunk that belief system, I guess. So once we realize what these belief systems are, then we can begin to debunk them. We can learn where they began, and we can overcome them, so they're no longer a barrier to us. They're no longer stealing our confidence, because how much confidence can you have if you're going out and trying to make money and you have the belief system that money's the root of all evil? It's like, well, of course you're not going to be motivated to make money. Of course you're not going to have the confidence to make that money if that's what you believe. Okay, so understanding what our belief systems are. When we were a child, we were a sponge, and all we did was just absorb information, right? This is why kids can learn languages so easily when they're young, because they're just a sponge, and they just absorb so much information. They're this perfectly innocent being, and they take on these belief systems, these programs, so innocently. And then part of this process is about connecting to that innocence and just understanding that we are innocent beings, and we were just absorbing information. And now, as conscious adults, we can take that opportunity to say, okay, what have I absorbed, and is it serving me or is it not serving me, right? So taking a look into your belief systems, and the best way to do that is just to look at your resistances. Take a few steps forward towards whatever it is you want to do, and what beliefs come up. What do you start telling yourself? What are you listening to from other people? What are you hearing your family say, your friends say? Like I remember when I started up my bar, my entire family was completely against the idea of me becoming an entrepreneur, because they thought I should go get a job, at Chrysler, and they thought I should work the line, become a supervisor, right? And that's because that's what they knew how to do. I don't fault them for trying to make sure that I was protected and safe, but now, the life that I live because of becoming an entrepreneur, I had to push past all those belief systems, right? So looking into the belief systems. The second is the last. Let me just review before we get to the last one, because the last one I think is the most important. One is belief systems. We got to look at what are the belief systems and how are they holding us back. Two is where you can't see the finish line. So getting just crystal clear on what it is you want to accomplish. So it's like, if you want to start a business and you don't know how to get there, that's fine, but what do you want from this business? So that comes down to taking a look at what kind of life do you want to live? Like, how much do you want a vacation? How big of a house do you want to live in? How many kids do you want to have? Getting really crystal clear on what it is that you want out of creating this business. What kind of life are you trying to create? Because the last thing you want to do is create a business that doesn't suit your lifestyle. For example, with me, with coaching one-on-one clients, it's like, it's great. And if I was coaching people live, one-on-one and face-to-face, that wouldn't be a very good model for me, because I couldn't do it remotely. My wife and I like to go away, for a month at a time, twice a year. So how would that fit into my model if I had to sit across from someone and coach them? So I created my business around being able to have Skype conversations and group coaching, where I'm only coaching people once a week in group settings. All of these types of things, right? So I modeled my business around what my life wants to be like. So it's not about knowing the know-how. It's about just having a clear vision on where you want your life to go, what you want from this business that you're creating, what you want from losing that weight, what you want from finding that perfect mate. Once you have that clear vision, you can basically go to a bigger step, which would be to surrender that over to a higher power and just allow it to flow into your life. But that's a whole entire another podcast. So can't see the finish line. That's number two. The next thing is that my clients this is number 3, is they just don't believe that they can do it, which I already touched upon, which is self-doubt. And that is about looking into where that self-doubt began. And it could be the smallest, tiniest little thing. It could be a teacher telling you that, you'll never make anything of yourself. It could be a kid on the playground telling you that you're terrible at soccer. Like, it's so crazy the programs the ego will create to try and protect us, right? So what self-doubt does, you're probably wondering, like, how does self-doubt protect us? And the way self-doubt protects us is it keeps us in our comfort zone. It makes us, when we're in our comfort zone, we're not going to fail because we're comfortable with where we're at. When we start to push past that comfort zone, we get uncomfortable. That's when all that self-doubt creeps in, right? And the self-doubt is basically saying, like, I don't know how to do this, and this is a program or a belief, or this is a feeling that was created because we don't want to feel like a failure. We don't want to feel like a bad soccer player. We don't want to ever have to feel the way we felt when that teacher told us that we're never going to become an astronaut or whatever it was. So it's about looking to where that feeling began and being free of it. That's the third. The fourth, and this is the most simple, but also the most difficult, is that the how is answered in the do. So if you want to start a business, if you want to increase your confidence, you have to do. That is as simple as it comes down to. And this is a perfect example for me. It's like, I can give you my own personal example. It's like when I guess had some sort of internal confidence, I believe. That's what gave me the ability to start my own company when I was 16 years old and go door to door, knock on people's doors and say, do you want me to clean your windows? Like, that's how I started my first company. And I grew that company very easily just because I had the confidence. And it was like kind of like a blind confidence, right? But that's always kind of been inside of me. But as I got older and started getting a little bit more concerned about failure, because now I have a lifestyle, I have cars to pay, now of course I'm married and I have a baby and I have all these things, that there started to become some fear in there. And I started to get obsessed with all the information that I needed to acquire to release something and make it so perfect. So when I was thinking about releasing my coaching system, I got obsessed with how I was going to release it. And I immersed myself in the knowledge. And that ended up probably being the biggest barrier to me to actually going out and doing it. It's like, what I've learned now is this: to take action. Yes, knowledge is important. You have to increase your knowledge because it'll get you there quicker. Like, coaching is part of increasing the knowledge, increasing the awareness, but it has to be hand in hand. It can't just all be focused on learning and no action. If you want to start a business, just start. Pick a starting point and start. And as you move forward, you're going to develop more confidence, right? So let me give you a practical example. When I was learning how to surf, when I first went out there, I was like fearful. Every time I would look below me, I think there was a shark below me. I was scared shitless that I was going to get eaten by a shark. I was getting pulled away by rip currents. I was getting beat up by the waves. And, I didn't have the confidence, right? But the more I did it, the more I was out there, the more comfortable I became. And all of a sudden, this thing that was once so uncomfortable to me, where I could barely sit on my board without worrying about getting eaten by a shark, became the most at ease thing that I had ever done. I came to this thing that I actually love to do, love to sit out there and wait for the next wave, and I never even have a thought of a shark anymore, right? So it's about doing. It's only in doing is like when we make the uncomfortable comfortable, that's what we're trying to do. So it's about pushing past those limits, and you can't push past limits unless you get into action. So this all comes back to my 3-step coaching system, which is realize. We have to realize what our problems are, what our belief systems are, what our programs are, what happened to us that created self-doubt. That is about the awareness. We have to have awareness about our problems in order to solve the problem. The second step is release. So it's like, okay, let's release these limiting beliefs by debunking them. Let's release these limiting beliefs by trying to understand where they started in our lives, right? Let's release these feelings of self-doubt or unworthiness or shame or guilt that we've been holding on to and be free of them forever. And when we release those, we're also going to release all of the programs that were created to protect us from feeling that way. what we're also going to release is all the thoughts that are associated with those negative emotions. So for example, the one feeling of shame that I felt in grade school, it created millions of thoughts throughout my entire life to make sure that I was successful. That's why my mind was just constantly I was in hyperdrive. I was impatient because I needed to get to where I needed to go, because if I didn't, I was going to feel that shame again. Now, obviously, I'm looking back with hindsight and I can see all of that now. I couldn't see it when I was in it. But through spiritual growth, spiritual development, I started to learn to uncover these things and become free of them. So these things will come up as you get into action. As you get into action, you start to learn that, oh, I'm feeling like I don't know how to do this. And so that lack of know-how, that's an excuse, right? So that is something that we can look into. You might take a step forward and you're trying to lose weight and be like, oh, like this intermittent fasting just isn't working for me. And it's just like, that's an excuse. It's like, I don't think that, that's you're not getting into action. It's like, that's what the ego is telling you, saying, hey, get the fuck out of this. We want to go back to where we're comfortable. I don't like being hungry all day long. I want to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner like I used to, right? That's what the ego is telling us. So the way we take back that power is we move into observer mode. We just begin to take note, take stock, create awareness around what the mind is telling us so that we can learn to become free of it. And we only do that when we take action. If you sit on the couch and want to talk about intermittent fasting and whether or not it's going to work, it's like you're never going to know. You're never going to know what resistances you're going to feel because you never actually got into action. So this is how you can build confidence. 1, uncover what limiting beliefs you have, debunk them, find out where they started. 2 is that look into where belief systems, what negative emotions are holding you back. Shame, guilt, self-doubt, unworthiness. Where did it begin? 3, get really crystal clear on what the finish line looks like. I mean, this is a fun exercise. Get super crystal clear. What kind of house you want to live in? What kind of, how much vacation you do? How many kids you want to have? What kind of cars you want to have? And don't sugarcoat it, but just be 100% real with you. Like, what is it you want out of this life? You want to live in a freaking mansion? Then write you want to live in a mansion, right? But if you're more modest, you want to travel more, then write that. It's whatever it is for you. But you have to have a clear vision on where you want to go. That way you can design whatever it is that you want to do around whatever goal it is that you have. And the last is you just got to get into action. And as you get into action, the how will get answered. But also as you get into action, the why you're not getting into action will be revealed to you. Just like the coronavirus has highlighted, what it is that we need to work on, getting into action and getting out of your comfort zone will begin to highlight what resistances we have. And when those resistances get highlighted, we are then aware of them. And now that we're aware of them, we can begin to resolve them. Without the awareness of a problem, we cannot resolve a problem. So that's how you build confidence. If you just take those 4 simple steps, your confidence will increase. It's not about mantras. It's not about positive thinking. It's about getting to the root of your issues and being free of them forever. Realize, release, realign. Realize what your problems are. Be free of them forever. Realign yourself with new habits and behaviors that are going to get you to where you want to go. Thanks for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Don't forget, though, I have my 10 tips PDF on my website on how to expand during this pandemic. I think it's insanely beneficial for anyone to have a quick read. It'll take you 10 minutes to read the thing. It's 100% completely free, so just head over to davidhaas, davidhaas.ca. You can download that for free. Plus, all my content is on there. You can check out my podcast. You can check out all my videos. It's all on there, but it's also, of course, on all my social media platforms. So thanks again for taking the time to listen to the podcast, and I'll be back next Wednesday with something new.